This is By Your Side, the podcast that cuts through the noise of new parenthood. No cliches, no guilt trips, just the real story. Practical tools and insights that actually help. I'm Katie, and I'm here to make sure you don't do this alone. In this episode of By Your Side, I am joined by the lovely Will Maurer. And so Will is the founder of the Children's Media Research and Reform Lab, and he's also a TEDx speaker. And I'm sure, Will, that our conversation is going to be probably a little bit challenging. I know it is. Some of the topics that you talk about is a bit challenging for me, looking back on my parenting style, but hopefully we can kind of dig into that. So I always like to start with, how would you, Will, describe yourself?
Well, I'm a father, passionate father. I was in the media and entertainment industry for over 20 years in development, animation, started on the Rugrats and children's media,
Oh, wow.
and worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Pokemon, and, got to work on a lot of the shows that inspired my career as a kid. And then I became a father in 2020 at the start of the pandemic, and that kind of set everything in motion because I had no clue how children's media was actually designed and what it was designed to do and for. And obviously, being a for-profit business, there's a lot of techniques that you've continued to see over the years just continue to get more chaotic, crazy, search for engagement. So, I'm thrown myself into this full time now and really looking for solutions and answers.
Oh, that's such a good introduction. So you talk about techniques, as if media is something that it's trying to achieve something. So I just assumed all these things are created because they're nice for kids to watch and entertaining, but you kind of leading me to believe that isn't necessarily always the driver for the stuff that kids have access to.
Yes, and I don't know the motivations behind every, show or platform or distributor or studio, but what we can see clearly is that, well, one, and I'm based in Los Angeles here in the United States, and I know you're in the UK.
Yeah.
Over here, there's not a lot of options for children under 2, and that's really my specialty, my focus, because it's been one of the most underserved, misunderstood areas in media. It's very polarizing. It's don't do it. If you do it, you're a bad parent. Why? But, when you look at the data and the research and the studies, over 75% of children are using some form of screen time before their first birthday, starting at an average age of 4 months old. So it's happening. And the biggest disconnect for me was, what options do parents have? And what we are told is, oh, PBS Kids or BBC Kids, there's great programming on there that's educational, that's, it's not designed for profit, it's designed for purpose. But those shows are designed for children 2 and older. So, as we start to look into to answer your question, as we start to look into how these programs are designed, one, they're designed for older children for the most part, which are developmentally inappropriate for a 1-year-old, even a 18, 19, month old, because they're just not designed for that. And then in other circumstances, like independent studios on YouTube and for-profit entities, they're all competing against each other for attention, right? The attention is what drives the retention, and that's what drives the profit to keep everyone employed and shows going. And these are things I didn't understand as an executive in the industry, because they're kind of not blatantly said, we need more, how do we keep the eyeballs on the screen? It's, we just need better programming. And then there's a lot of different departments involved in that. So that's kind of what I'm trying to help break down, help parents understand, and help identify. So you can, we do visual comparative analysis, where when you see a few of these shows next to each other, you could see a clear difference in ones that are designed for younger children and ones that aren't properly designed.
So that is, I think I will circle back to a question I kind of need to pose to you, but I think there's a phrase that you use, and I've heard you use, Will, that kind of makes me feel a little bit icky, if I'm honest. So I think we need to dive into it. And
Please.
it's that junk food media, and that being a child's first addiction. Now that feels really uncomfortable. What do you really mean by that? And what should parents be thinking about? So kind of firstly, you've talked about actually not all programs are designed just to be educational, just for your child. They're trying to engage your child and keep them on the screen. So they're not necessarily designed for your child's best interest. They're just they're designed to keep your child engaged. But yeah, junk food media and addiction.
Yes. Yeah. And speaking to parents, it's a complex topic with a lot of different elements attached to it. And I found the easiest way to kind of explain that to parents, to break it down. A lot of parents understand food and ingredients and harmful ingredients versus organic, good, whole food ingredients. So that's how I kind of look at the approach of explaining children's media to parents. And the harmful ingredients are the techniques used for engagement. So what I mean by that is even educational shows that on script are designed to educate, designed to showcase social emotional learning, cooperation, good messages, great messages for kids. What ends up happening is those messages get lost because of the production techniques that get piled on top of them. And those are the harmful ingredients that don't allow a child to process what's happening on the screen. So, very well intended scripts and messages, but the delivery of those messages are failing. And that's where we talk about the harmful ingredients and how they block a child from actually processing the information. And those are in the form of, you know, big, bright, bold colors that flash everywhere, visual effects and audio effects that are all over the place, multiple points of interest. So you can't actually focus on what's happening, you know, frenetic action, a lot of fast pacing and camera movements. And there's a very long list of those types of techniques that aren't necessary. They don't serve a purpose in any form, even entertainment, for a young audience. So they just, you know, as a parent, it's quite shocking to look at early years media because when you watch it, it looks like a movie trailer. It's happening so fast. Things are, from sounds and actions just filling the screen. When you look at those are the harmful ingredients. And to answer your other question about the use of the term addiction. So research shows that when a young child is exposed to high levels of stimulation, which is what a lot of these shows are designed to provide, it triggers dopamine imbalances that affect the brain in a similar manner to drug addiction. So that is the addictive patterns and behaviors that are being programmed into the media. And those dopamine triggers, you'll see it with a child if you talk to parents with young children. Once they have, it's like just going back to food and candy. You could tell an immediate difference when your child, if they don't regularly have candy or sugars, how they react differently. And you're like, that's what happened to my child. That is not my child.
Yeah.
So
Have
the
they
same
had
thing
sugar
happens with
recently?
media as well.
Yeah.
It creates the same chemical reactions or similar chemical reactions in the brain that affect the child. And, once they're exposed to high levels of stimulation, that's what keeps them hooked and longing for more, hence an addictive behavior to the screen.
Okay. So, I mean, dopamine, I'm going to put this in my kind of basic terms. So, dopamine's the feel good chemical, isn't it?
Correct.
And dopamine is something that you get when you do something that feels rewarding. So, it can be through a hug, it can be through play for a child, I'm guessing. But so, what you're saying though is through watching these kind of highly stimulated, bright color, attention all over, is actually almost, is that kind of short, sharp, repetitive triggering of dopamine release? Is that, so it's
Yes.
very different, I'm guessing, to the kind of the feel good of achieving, for example, a child building a tower of blocks. It's kind of that achievement or the fun factor that they might, so it's a different kind of, I hate to use the word hit, but let's keep going with the kind of addiction thing. Is it a different kind of hit for the brain?
Ye Yes, it's prolonged depending on how much time is spent there. There's not a lot of cognitive processing happening there in terms of
Okay.
using the brain. It's more static and it's overload for a child. So play-based dopamine is is different. Depending on the toys, there are some toys that are designed
Yeah,
um,
loads of
to
lights
overstimulate and just
flashing.
lights
Yeah.
and, so many things happening all at once that there's no clear benefits to that toy. And, whether it's neutral or negative requires additional research on those each individual item. But we know that there's not a positive benefit happening from those overstimulating toys or
Yeah.
media.
Okay. So you talk about media. Well, so that is that just on a phone, or is that how? It doesn't matter how a child kind of receives that media or accesses it in any way.
Well, different screens, phones, tablets, TVs have different elements that add to the engagement techniques or tactics and add to the overstimulation. Phones, obviously, there's a lot of just swiping, hitting, and you could, it's quite interesting to watch a 5, 6 month old who can figure out how to get to their favorite app and they're
Wow.
tapping,
Yeah.
they're swiping, but these things are engagement tactics, right? They're designed for adult engagement
Wow.
tactics, but children are getting programmed with that very early. So all the screen it depends on the content of the screens. And recently over here, I think a few weeks ago, the American Academy of Pediatrics finally changed some of their guidelines in relation to screen time, less around the amount of time and more about the quality of the programming, because 10 minutes of overstimulating poor quality media could be more damaging than an hour of very slow paced, intentionally designed media. And obviously, once you hit a certain point of screen time per day, then you get into the physical issues that screen time contributes to. And if there's no co-viewing happening, then the lack of interaction and social behaviors. So all of that has to be taken into account, but it's not a one way or the other. And that was the problem previously with the guidelines.
Okay. So you say there's a couple of things there. So there's the social aspect, which I guess if you've got a young child or any child or an adult, as we know, using phones, it's very kind of solitary. So you talk about co-viewing. So is that a caregiver sitting with a child and talking about what they're seeing? Is that what you mean by that?
Absolutely. And in the under 2 age group, we know that they're learning and developing from caregiver interaction, right? Not from a screen.
Yeah.
So creating content that leads to co-giver interaction, gives enough space and pacing so that a parent or a caregiver can come in and say, "Oh, look what's happening on the screen. Oh, look, the baby's trying to do this," or the character, whatever it is. That's where some of the good benefits are, and there's shared time there. And parents, need different avenues to bond with their child, right? It's
Yeah.
difficult, and that's kind of where some of the disconnect happens when they don't have that other opportunities to bond. So
Yeah.
designing media intentionally for co-viewing is important. And a parent needs to be educated how to do that, right? Just like playing with an infant is not that intuitive how to do it properly, how to do it
Yeah.
beneficially. Same with
Yeah.
media. We just throw it out there, put it on, and and move, we sit in front of our device, put the kid in front of their device, and
Yeah.
have two separate interactions, as opposed to how can we create an intentional co-viewing, co-bonding design around media. And that's really what we've been
Yeah.
focused on, because we know it's happening. We know that it's going to continue to happen. So how can, especially in the early years, how can we start parents and children when they are going to use screen time,
Mhm.
give them better options, alternatives, and education around that, instead of just saying, don't do it, it's bad, and you're bad if you do it.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting one because it is the kind of don't do it, and
Right.
it's the guilt and shame thing. There's
Yes.
enough things that as a parent, and I know you said you became a parent during COVID, that it's almost like an inbuilt part of parenting. So when you're told don't do it, but actually what you're talking about is it could be used as an opportunity to talk about what's on the screen. And that might be accessing something that you don't necessarily access in your outdoor environment or at home.
Right.
Yeah. But again, it's not necessarily intuitive of how to do that. But what you'll say, I guess you have the opportunities. You could talk about what's on the screen, talk about, you said, those feelings. But also, you mentioned something about the physical aspect. So, if I'm guessing, is that because if a child is sat for a long period of time, they're not moving, or what's the kind of detriment about that?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of it is physical movement based, right? If you're sitting in front of a TV, and there are periods where, a TV is used for regulation or for calming or soothing, things of that nature. But what ends up happening with traditional media, children's media, is that then they get into a loop, right? The autoplays continue. It's
Uh,
it's and now these autoplays, the compilations on YouTube and things like that are 60, 90 minutes long. And if
yeah.
you ever try to turn a show off in the middle while a child's watching,
Good luck.
it's like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
But that's all by design, right? They know you
Yeah.
can't stop in the middle. So if you give short segments and allow parents an opportunity to switch off at an appropriate time. And these are 7 minutes, 11 minutes. So if you do two of them, three of them, you're at least having three opportunities to stop, as opposed to if you go 60 minutes and rolled autoplayed right into the next one. So there's another 60 minutes, or else a meltdown will happen if I stop it. These are part of the deceptive, harmful design tactics of platforms, or you could the channel owner can control that, the studio, by not creating them in those long compilation chunks.
Mhm.
But as you've seen now, there's more and more from trusted sources following suit in compiling, stacking episodes without a break. So, these are all everyone racing to the bottom here, as opposed to
Yeah.
identifying the issues and saying, this isn't appropriate. Let's fix this. So that's the educational components I'm trying to share with, trying to build some reform around.
Yeah, and that's really helpful because I mean, I hadn't thought about that, about actually they're designed just to keep rolling on,
Right.
and anybody who's tried to stop, yeah, anything partway through an episode, let alone you can imagine as an adult, somebody coming in and
Right.
I'm just going to turn the film off, I'm just going to turn the series off,
Yep.
and we know for like the binge watching aspect, that's why studios have released 10, 12 of a episodes of a series in one because you could just keep rolling with it. I think the other thing I kind of wanted to pick up on was that emotional aspect. So you said about sometimes the kind of digital and media can be used to help calm or that emotional aspect for a child. And I just something comes to mind. And I was in the barbers with my middle child, and there was a mum with a little boy, obviously first haircut, very young, probably under 2, and he did not want his haircut, like was screaming the whole place down. And mum was desperately trying to distract him with the phone. Now, I get it. And I've been on that other end, desperately trying to distract my child. But there's also the thing about emotions, and is there an aspect of when we try and distract, are we teaching our children not to feel those emotions? Is that, is there any kind of research around that, of the negative effects of trying to, rather than, and it's really hard. If your child is having a meltdown, no matter where they are, and the quickest route is to stick your phone in front of them, I get it. I absolutely get it. But is there an element, or what does the science say about that emotional, almost disconnect? You're trying to cut those emotions off.
Yeah, and we know there's been a lot of research about using different types of tools, screens or food or
Uh,
any object to cut off the emotion and elicit a different emotion, a desired emotion, right? So it's not beneficial. And again, when I talk about the addictive elements, that is an addictive behavior, right? I'm feeling this way. I need something to soothe me, to calm me. I'm dysregulated. Here, have a screen. Here, have a screen. Here,
Mhm.
have a lollipop. Yeah, have can't. Whatever it is, we tend to default to things that aren't, have the conversation, have the hug, acknowledge and let them have their feelings, as you said, which are so important in identifying feelings and learning how to regulate, how to deal and cope, as opposed to look for something to give you that feeling, right? An outside
Yeah.
source. So absolutely, that's a big part of it. And I think there's ways that can be used in a way where it's not candy and it's not dysregulating or going, providing those quick continuous dopamine hits, right? Which are
Mhm.
part of what resets the the system, or not. Sorry, not resets it, but tilts it in the other direction.
Yeah.
So there are different ways, and I think we have to look at that because again, changing a whole method of parenting, which has been used for a very long time, is extremely difficult to say just do that. But I think part of it is education, right? As when parents I
Yeah.
understand, oh, I might be doing this, instead I could be doing this, or if I do this, what's a better thing that I can use and not go directly to the default worst thing that provides the instant
Yeah.
gratification.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really mindful that when you're talking, Will, it's realizing. I think that's the first step, isn't it? Because, and I think if you can look at as an adult, if you can look at your own phone usage, when do you use your phone? So is it kind of first thing in the morning? Is it because you're bored? Is it because you're irritated? Is it because, what are you doing in kind of using your phone, whether that's for scrolling, whether that's, checking? It's just being aware that actually these things, particularly phones, are designed to be, you're right, addictive. And that's as adults. And many adults, we are, I guess, modeling or showing, even if we're not giving our child a phone yet, by picking up a phone, we're at a moment that it's quiet, or we've got a minute's peace, or it's just like, oh, thank goodness, baby's sleeping, I'm going to pick my phone up.
Right.
Actually, really self-check of that. Is it because you need to message someone, or is it, why is it in this moment? Not that it's good, not that it's bad, but why am I needing or feeling the need to use my phone at this moment? And
Yeah.
it just kind of hopefully starts to give you a bit of insight to say, oh, okay, so let's not use that with my child in that same way. Or when you do it, if your child, and I just kind of think, if your child is having a meltdown in the middle of the supermarket and you need to get them out of there, and you need to do that in a calm way at that moment, it's fine. Let's face it, it's hard being a parent, isn't it? It's really challenging. But it's about, I guess, from what you're saying, it's about knowing why you're doing that in that moment and choosing the times that you're doing and using digital
Absolutely.
devices.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I just kind of want to dig a little bit because you use the word damaging. So these things are damaging. an infant's brain, I'm guessing. What does that actually mean?
Yeah. So, 80%, and this shocked me when I learned it, but 80% of brain development happens in the first 3 years. Astounding amount of development happening in those early years. And the experiences that children are having during these years shape the foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. So, if the neural pathways are formed by excessive stimulation from some of these shows or, whatever, mainly media, that's where they go to get that excessive stimulation. Those have severe adverse effects that could hinder a child throughout their lifetime. Not to say they can't be reversed or corrected, but they do have some pretty long-term effects that are triggered by that behavior. And as you can imagine, the younger the child, the more consequential the effects and outcomes can be. So that's why when I talk about this, how damaging for the early years, especially because there's not any content designed for a 1-year-old. And so what's happening is, and studios know this, right? If, even the most trusted programs that you would turn to know that they're programming for preschool. They're not programming for a 1-year-old because they know they don't have to. There's nothing out there that's appropriate currently. And parents have no choice but to say, okay, I'm going to watch Sesame Street, or I'm going to watch
Uh-huh.
whatever the baby safe, or some, whatever the experts say. If you're going to do it, watch this. I could tell you whatever that is, that if you watch it, watch this, was not designed appropriately for a 1-year-old. So that's really what we're focusing on. And the reason for that is because studios don't want to spend more money to develop more content, more appropriate content, when they don't have to. They're already getting the audience. And
Yeah.
that's not going to change until someone comes along and disrupts that and says, here's better alternatives that are designed for a 1-year-old. We know that a 2-year-old, 3-year-old won't watch this because it's not designed for them, but this is what's appropriate. And the only way to change that is to have a nonprofit element attached to it, right? If you
Yeah.
keep it for profit, you have to design in metrics that continue a for-profit entity. If you find the right supporters who believe in this mission and believe that parents and children need better alternatives, that's the only way that that whole system starts to change a little bit. So
Yeah.
that's really what we've been focused on, is providing. We don't promote screen time. We still say, look, if you as a parent can hold off screen time as long as possible, that is the best outcome, right? But
Yeah.
if you are going to do it, and we know it happens, we did it with our child, even knowing the research, what we ended up looking for was, what can we find that takes all of the chaos out of the screen? And we
Mhm.
ended up finding a mechanic, not made for kids, just a mechanic
Yeah.
on YouTube, who found old rusty cars, and he just set his camera down and he'd start sandblasting and bondoing and painting.
Yeah.
And, our son at a year old would watch 15 minutes and then not be interested. And then, we got a quick break. There was not a
Yeah.
lot of co-viewing, even though we pop in and say, look, he found a rusty car. Look, he went to the junkyard. We'd talk over it to a degree. We turned the sound completely off, no audio. You didn't need audio
Okay.
for a show like that.
Yeah.
But children that young they don't need a narrative, right? They don't need
Yeah.
entertainment. They're not able to process that anyway. So
Yeah.
the only thing you're doing is creating, the overstimulation
Yeah.
desire to continue to watch that.
Do you know, Will, you've just put my mind at rest because my question was going to be, you're a dad. Have you managed this? Because I think it's about keeping it real, isn't it? And that parents need a break. My mum still says now, she used to stick me in front of the Muppets. I'm still a massive fan of the Muppets. But apparently I'd sit there for, by her words, hours. I'm sure I didn't sit there for hours. But, you, as a parent, you do need a break
Yeah.
sometimes. And I love the fact that you've kept that real, that's still possible, and you can still not necessarily sit and co-watch, but bring a bit of a narrative around it and give yourself that bit of space without feeling incredibly guilty, which is just, amazing. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
No, absolutely. Parents need breaks. Look, the parent's mental health affects the child, right? So if
Yes.
we're not
Yeah.
taking care of ourselves and if we need a break, for us during COVID, we didn't have much help. Our
Yeah,
son
that's
had colic
tough.
for the first year, so we didn't have any
Oh,
sleep either. So
yeah.
that's how I got into it. We're like, at 6 months, we're like, when does screen time start? I didn't even know. I was like, when does it start? What do we watch? What's appropriate? What are, what are the experts saying? And that's when I went down the rabbit hole. I was like, whoa, what
Mm,
is happening here? And this is crazy. And why does everybody know this? Am I the only one? And now I feel like, oh my God, I can't. But what do I do? And the answer was, we need a break. We have to find something that, knowing the issues, knowing that the media for kids is designed to overstimulate, what can we find that takes those elements out of it? And that's where we found the trash truck just going down the street where someone's following it down the street and you're just watching it, or a mechanic sandblasting and painting.
yeah.
Those things were for us very helpful. And now I have a 5-year-old who honestly doesn't want to watch TV. He just, now we're like at the stage where we're like, do you
Yeah.
want to watch a movie? Let's watch a Christmas movie over
Yeah.
Christmas. And he's like, I don't want to watch a movie. And we're like, okay, we're not going to force you, but it'd be nice if we could watch something together now. But
Yeah.
he doesn't crave that. And I know this is just a one-off. It's not a, it doesn't mean that's going to happen with every child, but that's been our experience, starting with more mindful screen time and kind of trying our best limit when we can and not use it as a tool you know, to help in our parenting. But there are times when that happens and we do.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's so incredibly helpful. Oh, Will, I've got my final question. Now, I ask this to all the guests on my podcast, and you're not as far down the journey of parenthood as some of my guests are. So I'll give you the latitude of maybe in an area that isn't to do with media. But if you could go back for you starting as a new dad, what advice? I know you're 5 years or down the line, but what advice would you give yourself?
Probably be kinder to myself, right? Because you want to be perfect as a parent. Most parents want to, and then you end up doing things like using a screen, or there's other elements that you're like, I don't want to do this as a parent. I know it's not the best thing, but also, to have be more kind to myself. And I think that will be good for everyone around.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. So, Will, you've got a TEDx talk coming out soon. So, what we'll do is we'll drop the link to that in this podcast about the same time, I think, as it comes live. And if not, we'll drop it in afterwards. And I just want to say a massive good luck with that, because it's so important to have someone like you advocating for children and parents as well, rather than just kind of taking you just shouldn't use screen time, being really realistic about what that means and giving parents the choice and the power. So, Will, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Oh, thank you, Katie. I appreciate it.
Before we finish, I just wanted to say this. If today stirred anything up for you, you don't need to make sense of it all right now. You can just let it land slowly. Parenting asks so much of us, especially when you're already feeling stretched. And sometimes just having the words for what we're feeling is enough for today. But if you do need more support, make sure you reach out to a trusted friend or professional. If this episode supported you in any way, you can follow by your side so that these conversations are there for you when you need them. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'm really glad you're here.